for a split second.
Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Gold Mine. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today, and I am stoked. We got ours jumping in for the first time, and we have a heck of a topic, so I am going to get right into it. But before that, make sure you're doing all the things. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff, get your emails when we go live, which is, of course, Wednesdays for The Gold Mine and Fridays for The Collective. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, put them up in the comment section throughout the show. We can hit those and add them to the discussion. And if you're not in on this already, make sure you are in the loop with the Reinforcement Loop, our weekly newsletter that comes out every Sunday. And I cannot tell you how much great information is in there because it's a lot. Other than that, let's just dive right into it. Arj, why don't you give us a quick little 10 to 15 second, who are you, where you come from, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Arj Graywall. I hang my hat in Ottawa. I'm a dad of two girls, a husband to a great wife, and I served 20 years in the Canadian Forces. 13 of those years were with CANSOFCOM JTF2 as a specialist and a surveillance operator. Retired in 2019. Moved through enterprise business at IBM, the entrepreneurial journey through a couple of pursuits, and right now I lead a company called Ventus Respiratory Technologies, and I'm calling in from the Yukon, where the family's going to do about a 10-day trip to this beautiful territory.
Bam. I love it. Nailed it. Just right off the bat. Every point, solid. Wicked. Sean, how's Op Pegasus treating you?
Yeah, it's fantastic out here. Of course, being on the DZ yesterday for the first time. That's my fourth year out of OpPeg. Seeing Tim Turner and all the gang. It was ridiculous. You know what that crew's like. Anyway, it was nothing but maximum stoke. And I was up in the air in an experimental plane doing about 1,000,000 miles an hour trying to do barrel rolls with an old friend, which was, again, an entirely different experience. So it was a great day yesterday. Looking forward to seeing the troops out on the DZ later today.
You got to give everyone a punch in the shoulder for me, which, I mean, it might be a lot of punching, but I'm sure you're up to it. I wish I could be out there. Unfortunately, I have spent all my money on my basement, which I'm still building. So you got to do what you got to do. Now, the topic of the day, stability in a spinning world. This is the world is seemingly kind of going off the rails a little bit, but I'm excited to see what your guys' thoughts are on this one. So let's get some first thoughts. Arj, I'm going to start with you. When I sent you that topic, what kind of clicked in your brain?
Well, the first was obviously that I'm here in the Yukon, so stability is almost an illusion. I don't think there's a such thing as stability. It's about flow and it's about moving forward. And things get thrown at you that you can't expect or that are outside of your control, and you got to find ways to deal with them. And I think the best way that I've been able to deal with them is just by flowing and bypassing and moving forward wherever you can.
Yeah. I mean, definitely the mooses have the right of way out there. That's for sure.
They're huge. They're huge.
They're big, right? Sean,
Yeah.
What's your first thoughts on this?
My first thoughts were actually coming straight out of the green room, where we spent just a few minutes making sure that we're all having a good time before he went live. And as Arj was saying, I complimented Arj on how great of a podcast it was. It was his first podcast, by the way, with Randy Turner, who is also a great guest that has been on the show in the past. And I watched that podcast some time ago when it first came out. And then it was so good, I watched it a second time, which is unusual for me. But I watched it for a couple of reasons. One is because Arj and Randy in that podcast, as far as I can tell, are the first couple of guys who I thought really elevated the representation of what it means to be in special operations post-service. And so I just thought it was a really wonderful example of two great men that came out of a system that taught them how to be in the moment. Now, the reason I mentioned that being in the moment is because when we were in the green room, Arj was saying that, this is a relatively new thing for him, podcasting, but while we're in the green room and while he was on Randy's podcast, what I did know is how centered, how grounded, how namaste Arj is, regardless of how he feels. And I'm sure, I say I'm sure, I'd just like to state that it is quite common, even when we've had guests on the show who've had hundreds of podcasts, that then when they come over to this show, because it's a live podcast and because we do go quite deep and we do think fairly, I don't know, maybe philosophical at times, it's a fast moving show and it will make some people who are experienced podcasters uncomfortable because they're not used to how rapidly the conversation moves in deep tangential ways. So I'm super stoked because I know that Arj has got it like he's right on the X taking care of business in this very moment. But I do know that it's difficult. So maybe as the show unfolds, we'll see what Arj thinks towards the back end on how it went.
I like it. We'll add that into the final thoughts on get a little AAR directly for the troops too. That'll be awesome. Well, I was thinking about this last night, and I have a bunch of videos that we're gonna jump into here in a second. And I was trying to figure out a topic, and I was trying to think of I was tired. It was late at night, and my brain wasn't working. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna really focus on this for 1 minute, and I'm just gonna really hammer this one thing. And I stopped watching TV. I stopped kind of focusing on my wife on the couch. I stopped engaging in everything else, and I just really focused my my thought process into getting this. And I jumped on ChatGPT and I asked a bunch of questions, and I started going back and forth into what do I want to talk about? How do I even put these things together? Because the videos I have are kind of off-centered of each other, but they all flow down to one main road, and that is, how do we stay stable? How do we maintain our base when the world seems to be throwing us for loops? And there's been a lot of historical events that have happened the last 20 years for a lot of us. So I think it could be quite challenging to stay stable on this. And I'm going to jump into this first video, and then we're going to discuss it from there. So here we go.
Centered and focused, the force has no power. When it's not centered and focused, well, it gets tossed every which way. You ever meet those people? When they're with this group of people, they become them. When they're with this group of people, they become them. Well, they're not centered. Part of the reason why our thoughts master us is because we are not focused on something that we should be focused on, and the enemy has a heyday in the gaps of our thinking, puts thoughts in our head because we're not focused on the right things, because we will move in the direction of our strongest thought.
How about that? Let's jump into it, Arj. Thoughts?
I mean, something that just keeps coming through, my mantra is the mission. And I think in business, in the military, in life, we're always being asked to have a clarified mission. What are you doing and why are you doing it? What's the end state for what you're doing? And in business and military, it's almost easy, right? For who you are as a person, that can change. And I think stability for me comes in, what do I want to be known for, and what trusted relationships do I want to carry through the rest of my life, and what does being accomplished look like? And for me, those are individual. They're grounded in my family. So that's kind of how I stay stable through all the noise, and it's how I cut through the signal for what and how I want to operate and how I want to practice and how I want to succeed. So for me, it's grounding myself in that mission, and whenever something gets thrown at you out of a loop, it becomes your baseline. You just go back to that baseline of who do I want to be, who am I, and where am I going next?
Ooh, I love that. Sean, you got thoughts?
I do, but they're generally exactly what Arch just said. So I can't just piggyback off of that. I'll try to do it a different way. So I think something that is important is, irrespective of who you are and what you've done, how big your career has been, how small your career has been, whatever the case is, your life is generally like that very animated pottery guy. You put your clay in the middle, and your clay will tumble in the direction of its choosing if you're not controlling it. And how far it tumbles off the table is based on velocity. So the faster that wheel spins, the faster that clay shoots off in the random direction, and it'll go as far as it based on the energy within the table. And so that's kind of your life. If you want to stay very stable, very present, very centered on that pottery wheel, then don't make any moves. Don't make any really aggressive, uncontrolled, unplanned, maximum velocity moves if you really all you want to do is be centered today, centered in this moment, centered this month. But if you want to like explore your boundaries of the pottery table, then you have to start applying some momentum, some velocity. And that's when the clay starts moving. That's when the clay is shapeable. And so the faster that world is spinning for you, the better you are controlling that clay, the more beautiful the sculpture that you create or the pottery piece that you create. So, yes, it's good to stay centered, but eventually you have to apply momentum to start creating that art. And that velocity that you apply should be carefully controlled, carefully considered, unless you appreciate your clay shooting off into the corner of the room so that you can learn something from it. Now, I'll say that my life has had a lot of clay firing in a lot of directions that I appreciate. That's how I live my life. I like to see the clay splat against the wall and then go and retrieve it, learn my lesson, put it back on the table, and start spinning it again. But that isn't for everyone. But that's how I was brought up in the military and particularly in special operations. It taught me to be able to do that and not freak out. So, the pottery wheel is kind of like your life to some degree. The velocity you apply is the creation you will make.
I really like this. And Arj, you got something?
Yeah, I'll just echo kind of what Sean was saying, and Chance, kudos to you to the world is spinning and having a pottery wheel analogy, real nice on that one. But I think where Sean and I's convert or perspective complement each other. It's what do you want that clay to be? At the end of the day, what's your mission? Is that clay a bowl? Is it a cup? Is it a sculpture? Setting that intention before you start spinning that wheel is kind of where to start. And I think that's where mission and velocity, I think, come together.
I agree with you, and I want to go down this road a little bit too, because I was thinking about when you think about spinning something, I always think about centripetal force in the fact that, the act of spinning wants to pull you away from the center. It wants to bring you outwards, and the faster we spin that, I come from a family of potters. Most of the women in my family are all potters, and I've been around a spinning wheel for a number of years. You need a certain velocity in order to mold things the way you want it. But if it's too fast, then it starts to distort the rotation, which then it distorts the piece that you're making. And so I was likening this to mission creep. Arj, you were saying, like, if you have a really focused mission, you come back to the mission, you can always do these things. But sometimes we spin the wheel a little too fast and everything starts to misshapen just a little bit, and then it starts to warp a little bit, and then your mission becomes a bit distorted. You start to gain these little mission creep things of like, well, there's this piece, and then, but if I don't do that, then I have these things, and you can kind of fall down a road where everything gets so distorted that the original mission gets lost. And I'm wondering your guys' thoughts on that in terms of trying to keep that original mission focus without losing it to centripetal force. Arj, what do you got?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, guilty, right? I've got warp. I've got a lot of warp in my mold right now, because I try to take on more and more to accomplish a mission that maybe isn't as clear as I need it to be. Um, and then there's an aspect of opportunistic, you know, um, creep as well, where things get thrown at guys like you and me, and you kind of have to say, well, do I say no to this or do I say yes to this? And when you say yes to it or no to it, it's at the expense of something, and maybe it's at the expense of the shape that you want to take, or you're adding something to the mission, which is exactly what mission creep is. There's one more hit to do. There's one more bound to take, and you say, do I need to take it? Is it necessary? But when you're in the moment and when you have the opportunity to do something, you often, guys like us, will take it. So I think it's managing that, and it's managing that velocity. But I really like your point about, there's some clay that needs a certain speed. What is that speed for you?
I dig it. I dig it. Now, I got a quick comment here from Maloney. Be a chameleon. Improvise, adapt, overcome, but understand your foundation. I think that's a key point, is to really not just to know the mission, but to know why that's the mission, to like understand what it is. Shaun, you got any thoughts on any of this?
Well, there are two aspects to it. So understand your foundation, we can call the mission, but understand the foundation, know yourself. I like fast moving clay, man. It's because I was taught to like it. And so if things start misshaping, I'm okay with that. In fact, I'm encouraging it because I like to see things distort enough so that I have a different perspective on things to a degree where that same piece of clay in someone else's hands will have like a thick wall dimension. But I'm going to work it until it's almost transparent and warped so I can almost see through the clay in a way, which we could build out in a whole bunch of analogies, but I don't think we've got time for it. I do want to make this point on the velocity of the clay, the shape of the clay, and how it relates to who you are. It's a different conversation if we're talking purely from a practical sense, if we're talking from a career sense, like the military first responders, Leo as an example. If your clay is that job, then you don't have quite as much room to play because the game is serious. But when you get out of those careers, when you transition into civilian life, and I'm not saying that civilian life becomes less important, I'm simply saying it takes a different direction that isn't quite as, saving lives, we'll say. I just want to state that pipeline is different than perhaps your civilian pipeline. And your civilian pipeline allows you to take that clay and just frickin' squash it and start over again and not worry about it too much. So every day you get an opportunity to play with that clay, and every day you're not trapped into a specific shape. You can just squash it and start again. And that isn't quite the same in the military, as an example, I would say.
I wonder if that has to do with the fact that the military is such a structured pipeline, as you said. Like, there are not only are the consequences extremely high for failure, but there's less room for, like, there's less wiggle room, there's less play. If you make a mistake, the rules are set. This is what is right, this is what is wrong. It's pretty cut and clear. Whereas in civilian life, it can be a bit more shady, a bit more blurry around the edges as to what is right and what isn't, because we can kind of get away with pretty much anything. We don't have sergeant majors breathing down our neck about, shaving or boots or things like that, right? So I'm wondering if maybe that has something to do with it. Arj, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've been out for 5, going on 6 years now, and I almost, and I want to bring in this chameleon aspect to it as well. Civilian life is natural and military life is unnatural, right? Because civilian life, as a human, you need to be able to make mistakes. You need to be able to learn from them. You need to be able to like hide those mistakes to yourself as well, right? That's what you can do in civilian life. So I don't think there's a right or wrong, but I think there's like this aspect of natural, unnatural, that would be a fun follow-up conversation, down the road. But whereas people and humans are compared to animal instinct or capabilities, like the chameleon, who can change color, some of them can shapeshift slightly to grow horns and limbs that look like branches, and it's just amazing things like octopi. um the thing, what's really interesting about foundation and mission, as we talk, as it relates to animals, is the reason they do those things is to protect themselves or hunt. Those are the two reasons that they are able to change color and shapeshift and do these amazing things. And I think for humans, we have more to think about. So as we go into scenarios where we maybe need to change our how we speak, or our social sensibilities, or how we follow rules. Um, it's more than just hunting and protecting ourselves. But maybe it's not. So maybe I'll throw that back at you guys. Do we change, and do we shift, and do we learn new things to hunt and protect ourselves, or is it more complex than that?
I'm going to jump on this one first, but Shaun, I'm going to hit you after. I think it absolutely is. It's to hunt and to protect ourselves. And at the basic root of it all, because I think we put the connotation of hunting in terms of food accumulation, but I look at hunting as seeking something. Like, I want that, and then I'm going to hunt for it. I'm going to figure out how to get it, and I'm going to figure out what position I need to be into, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But I think that's why we do things. That's like, if I really want this podcast to be successful, I need to shift how I interact with the computer, with the microphone, with, like, I have to change slightly so that the situation will work in my benefit. So I'm hunting a good podcast. Same thing. I'm hunting a stable internal voice. I want to have a really clear signal, really clear mission. I need to hunt for that. I have to go out and do the steps that are going to be required for it. And similarly, to protect myself, I can't, I'm not just going to come on this show and throw my reputation to the wind, or say stuff that isn't true, or try to pump up something that could hurt me or my family later on, right? So I think it absolutely comes back to those two things. That's a great thought. Shaun, what are you thinking?
Well, there is a third, and it's kind of funny, but we'll move past it pretty quickly. Hunt, for sure. To protect, for sure. To survive, for sure. But to procreate. I mean, insects change colors, change shape to breed, to mate, to attract, to put themselves out there to gain more of the clan, as it were. And so there is a certain requirement to increase the footprint of the species. There's a certain requirement to reinforce the genetic makeup of the species when they're doing what they're regularly doing on a daily basis. There is also this overarching theme of to extend the species. Now, whether the animal understands that or not, like at a deep conscious level, is neither here nor there. That is hardwired. And so I believe it's also hardwired in us as humans. However, this, as I see it, generally speaking, a relatively new phenomenon is our species trying to increase its footprint to some degree on a digital world, on a social media sphere. And so just like the three of us are right now, we're all doing our best for our own selves. But as I see it, the overarching theme is trying to do it better for those around us, or encourage thought in others, or to some degree, increase the survivability of the species. And so I don't think it's just the two things mentioned. I do believe there's this procreate aspect of it, if you will.
That's a very good point. I've been asked about this, and I've done it in a couple of presentations in terms of the limbic system, and when things get integrated and you go into fight, flight, freeze. And I'm always like, but there's another one. It starts with F, and it usually involves two people. So that is part of it. Procreation is a big thing, and it is hardwired into our brain.
And for anyone listening, that's called fawn, not anything else that you got through your dirty minds.
It's called a lot of things, but Arj, you got any thoughts? What are you thinking on this?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Great addition. It is. I mean, that becomes the instinctual core of all life on Earth, is to make more life on Earth. So you're exactly right. And I think we could house that this whole conversation around change and adaptability is being able to adjust and adapt to the scenarios that are in front of you. And the more history and the more experience you have, and the more conversations like this that you have or listen to, those are just tools in your toolbox to be able to add to that adaptability.
Totally agree with that one. It is a adaptability is a good one. I think we've done that as a topic a couple of times, but every time we come back to it, we learn new stuff about it, which is really fascinating. Now I got another video here, and it goes directly in line with what we're talking about, but any other thoughts before we jump on? Okay, good to go. Speaking of adaptability, we are an adaptable species, so let's hit this and we'll go from there.
Believes that peace is the human norm, inheritance, and right. It's a human right to live in peace. It isn't.
Isn't it?
There is no such right. No such right exists in nature. It is a wonderful thing to have, but it can be taken away like all rights. It's the problem of the language of rights. The language of rights is taught as if rights exist like oxygen, and they don't. They only exist if they are fought for and maintained. And they can only be maintained if people who would threaten your rights, including your most basic rights like your right to life, are not allowed to succeed. There is no law of nature that makes peace the norm. It isn't the norm historically. We are deeply blessed to have lived in the past few generations in a world in which it was relatively the norm in Western democracy.
Bam. Let's talk about it. Arj, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, peace. I joined the army when I was 15 or 17, sorry. I've been thinking about it since I was like 12. I would say my attributes were to join the military to help preserve peace, but knowing that to do that, violence is sometimes necessary, and preparing for it, adapting for it, is in most cases the best way to maintain peace. Deterrence goes a long way. Preparedness goes a long way. It's something that we're catching up to in our own country, as the world keeps spinning and turning, and world order changes on a daily basis. So is safety and security a human right? I agree with that IG post that no, you got to work for it, and you got to fight for it.
I totally agree. And I think not only externally, but internally as well. That's one of the things I've learned over the years, is that it has to be your internal peace, that you have to be ready to fight for that. And you got to be properly set up so that you can maintain it, because it's a fight if you don't. Shaun, you got any thoughts?
Well, just on that key point, I think that the internal battle is a much more deeper battle than perhaps the external battles that you'll have to face in your life. And I say that only because that's been my experience, and my internal battles have been ongoing for years. And I think that if you're listening to what I just said right now and you're shrugging your shoulders and saying, that ain't me, dude, it's probably because you haven't engaged your internal world deeply enough to start exploring some of the things that you can do better in. So moving on from that, I want to state that this adaptability aspect, or the requirement to understand that the rights that you think you should have, and the fact that you don't actually have any rights, is a complicated subject best understood through service. So much like Arj, as a young boy, when I was 5 years old, I was telling everyone growing up in England that I was going to be a soldier. And I didn't know why I was thinking that or feeling that or saying that, but that just is. And so I did join the military, or the cadets, at a young age, and then went on to the military. And so I didn't understand peace at all before I joined the military. That wasn't one of my convictions. I just felt compelled to serve. But through my service, I began to understand these broader topics, such as peace in our times, in a way that I didn't understand as either a 5-year-old or as an 18-year-old. And so even today, like turning 62 this year, I'm still thinking about the lessons that I learned in the military. And so the subject of peace, or the subject of many things, I believe is best understood through service, and not just while you're in it, but post service as well. I've found is where some of my greatest times of clarity have come from, reflecting back on service and what it provides in the way of internal wisdom, and what it provides in the way of external outcomes. And so I am in full agreement with Arj as to what he said. However, there's this other piece that you don't have to have anything figured out. You can join up, serve, and then begin to learn what you're all about.
Yeah, totally agree with that one as well. I got a couple comments on the Instagram side I want to touch on. Little Woodworks asks, violence equals peace? Is that too simplified or just wrong? And then Vegger Daniel Labonte, good to see you, Daniel. He says, peace can only come from within, where perhaps that attainment aids to influence the external environment to become more peaceful. And I like the play on both of these, and the fact that the reason I brought it up in this order with this idea of adaptability is that rarely do we get to choose to engage in these situations, right? If things start to go bad, it's usually external things that are happening, and then we have to adapt in the moment. And we are adaptable creatures. We can engage in violence when necessary. We can engage in peace when necessary, if we take the time to recognize that that is what's necessary. And for many years, I did not take that time. As a young man, I went straight to violence all the way because I thought that would bring me peace. But what it brought me was more violence. That's what it ended up doing. But until I started to understand what violence was, you start training martial arts, you start serving in the military, you start to really see violence and what it's capable of, and you start to realize, like, oh, you know what, I like what it was back then. But you never really realize what it was until you actually see what's up front. So I think that's an interesting line to this. I'm going to come back to you, Arj. What do you got going on in the brain of yours?
Yeah, I really like Sean's point, because I think there's actually two types of peace and two types of violence. There's internal and then there's external. So there's the physical, violence. There's a physical piece of a country not at war or a country at war. You can see the difference between the two. And then there's the internalized, right? The metaphysical that I think, Sean was talking about is, which, too much peace can cause internal war, and too much war can cause other issues like we've all seen and probably experienced. But it's important to separate the two and understand what are we talking about here. The comment of does peace equal violence? Absolutely, that's oversimplified. I would say the risk of violence helps maintain peace, right? That deterrent aspect is really important. And it's why all of us prepare every day. It's why Sean's got biceps that he does. It's just to tell people, like, hey, don't mess with me, right? Like, you're not going to like what happens. So he probably lives a pretty peaceful existence where some folks, might not. So that's just my point, is like, what defining, peace versus violence in the physical realm, or are we talking, in the metaphysical?
I like that. And also, Sean's got some pretty big biceps metaphysically as well. That's another side of it. But I this goes back to your point about or about the comment earlier from being chameleon, is that if you really want peace, to use a deterrent, as you said, Arj, when we were talking earlier about the how the brain works, and or how the animal mind works in protection or reproduction or hunting, I think that's part of it, because to protect oneself, a lot of animals, a lot of bugs will create defenses, and we have the ability to create, defenses. Like, you can create situations and systems within your own body that allow you to not directly engage things, just to project the image that nobody wants to mess with you. That grants protection in and of itself. I think that's a interesting point. Sean, you got any more thoughts?
Just a couple. One is that your physical attributes, or your physical look, or your physical presence can come from an inauthentic path or an authentic path. So how I sit here and how I represent myself today is a result of decades of me doing me, and this is what you get nowadays. And so it wasn't a plan that I came up with last week, and I've been doing push-ups ever since for the last 7 days. It's a result of a body of work that it's not that I'm proud of, or that I want a green light to checkbox in my life. It just is what it is. And I love that, man. I love that I worked hard, I did some things, and now I am who I am, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. So where it does become uncomfortable, I believe, and I saw this out on the drop zone yesterday to some degree, not a lot of it, but just a little bit, is when a person isn't settled with themselves, when they aren't to some degree at peace internally, or they don't perhaps understand who they are more fully, then there's a tendency to externalize, this is what I'm all about. And so that will be either in what they wear or how they stand or how they talk or how they move. And it won't be that it's inauthentic, because they're authentically being who they are. They just haven't figured out how to represent themselves to the external world in a way that matches up with who they are. And generally speaking, where the cognitive dissonance occurs, or where it kind of has some friction to it, is when an individual doesn't know themselves internally as well as they should. Therefore, they put on a chameleon-like disguise on the external world, and it just doesn't fly. It doesn't fit. It doesn't work. And so it's a disservice to the individual when they can't be who they are, because they're not maybe desperately, but they're seeking to be something that they want you to believe they are. And perhaps that's what they're seeking. Perhaps that's where they'll be next week or next month or next year, but they ain't there yet. And so just that little gap of identity, that little delta or distance between, I know who I am, but I want to show you who I am, and those things don't match up. Just a thought. What do you guys think?
I take it, Marge. What do you got?
I mean, I think the word we're looking for sometimes here is there are posers out there. There's people who dress, look, and act a certain way to ingratiate themselves to a social network that they want to be a part of or feel they should be a part of. I think in our world, just around the three of us, we see a lot of that happening. I think you can, some can see that as a compliment. Some can see it as a threat. I think I've seen it as both. But there are aspects of folks wanting to be part of certain communities and doing everything that they can, aside from putting in the hard work, to be part of those communities. And it's something that we should all be conscious of. And it can be military, or it can be police, it can be other groups altogether. We kind of opened, Shaun mentioned about the social digital networks that are out there. There are people faking it on those as well. So it's not, again, it has to be physical, it can be digital too.
I wonder how much of this has to do with we did a whole show on fake it till you make it, actually, at one point, and it turned out to be a really great show, but I wonder how much of it has to do with the fact that we've been telling people to just insert yourself into these situations for a number of years. Like, that's been a pretty standard thing to say, because it's become a colloquialism, let's put it that way, in that fake it till you make it, man, just fake it till you make it. When really it comes back to what you just said, is that you have to put the work in. Because we all know great people who have never served in the military, or we also know people who have served in the military who are just jerks. Like, they're not really part of that group anymore anyway. And I think a lot of it has to do with the intention as to what it is that person wants. Do they just want to hang out with cool people? Do they want to be part of a high-performing team? Do they want to be hanging out with the cool kids in the CQB range, right? Like, what is the intention behind that interaction? I think that's a big part of it. I got a quick comment from Little Word Works on the Instagram, said that Shaun's comments always make my two brain cells fire off and attempt to think. That's pretty solid. That's good. If you can get them rubbing together, maybe they can create fire. That's what you need. I'm just going to go around real quick again. Shaun, you got any other tidbits to add on to this?
Not much. I just want to state that I don't see the problem with someone wanting to be part of something. I don't. And I also appreciate someone striving to be part of something. That's what you're supposed to do. My only issue is if you're doing it just to be part of something rather than wanting to be it. Those are two different things. Wanting to be a part of something is just, as I see it, is trying to ride the shine. But if you want to be it, if you want to represent it, if you want to emulate it, if you want to be the poster boy for it, whatever that means to you, if you're engaging so deeply that you think that you're going to move the needle in it, then I'm all about it. I love someone who's trying. I love someone who's got a shovel in their hand and they're digging a hole. I do. Get to work. Now I'm a fan. Where it does disconnect for me is when someone's just talking the talk, but they're not walking the walk. And I don't want to be, I don't want to do a quick throwaway. This one's so easy. I don't want to throw this one away within the next few seconds. We should probably hang on to it for pause 2, 3. But literally, the unit motto is facta non verba. And so it is deeds, not words. And if you want to be part of something great, you can't imagine your way to it. What you have to do is grab it by the throat and start choking it until it's yours. You've got to go hard with conviction and almost an all-in attitude. And eventually you'll become what you're supposed to become, rather than sitting back dreaming what you are and not grabbing a shovel and digging your way towards it.
That's a good point. Now, I have a question for you guys on this one, because this just clicked in my head, is that, yes, facta non verba, but it's deeds, like it's plural, deeds, because anybody can do, usually you can do one thing once, right? Like, I can do a hard thing today. Cool. Now I'm part of the team. No, I'm guessing here. So I want you guys' thoughts on this, but is that really what it means? Is more about like the consistency of deeds over the words, rather than just being able to do one hard thing or being able to do one particular thing at any sort of difficulty? Just that consistent push of work, always output. Is that where it's coming from? Arj, what do you think?
Yeah, I've never heard it said that way, but the plural aspect of deeds and words is meaningful. I think that's a real good grammar police pickup on that saying. I agree fully. It is about consistently doing the right thing, working hard, showing up, helping your friends to achieve your mission. There's also a camp that it's deeds and words, like both matter. But yeah, good pickup. I really like that one. I'll think about that more.
Sweet. Shaun, any points on that before we move on? I got another video too.
That was a good pickup, Chance, because that is, generally speaking, the essence of what it is required to become who you're supposed to become. The one and done will not do it. It is the consistent application of the relentless pursuit of excellence, to a degree where you kind of forget that that's what you're doing, to a degree where you kind of forget that there's an S on the end of deed. Like, I'd kind of forgotten that it's deeds, because I'm so used to, like, I've got so many deeds in my day that tomorrow I'll have to borrow some time for the deeds. And so the consistent application of everything, to be honest, is so normal to me now that I'd forgotten that it was pluralized. So good catch.
Well, I was thinking that there's guys that'll be like, hey man, I took this CQB course, now I'm a friggin' operator, and it's like, well, you did it for 2 days. That's not really that's not really how you get to that level. And that's what clicked in my head, is that it's, if you really, I don't even know what the actual time frame is, but for an operator, but it's like 6 months of just CQB within the training cycle. It's probably a wrong actual timing, but it's a long time to just get to the CQB level of the guys up at the hill. So it is, I'm down with pluralizing that all the time. I'm going to keep that in my head. Any other thoughts before we move on to this last video? Good to go? Right.
No, but we should tell Seb that the fact that him and I did a sniper course for 5 days, that we're not snipers. I thought we were, but I guess I gotta do it more.
Well, you're talking to one guy who could probably end you from Vancouver, where you are, from Vancouver Island right now. But Shaun, does that make somebody a sniper 5 days?
I think it does, within your world, in context of who you were 5 days prior. And so that's maybe the most important aspect of that. Seb raising his name up. There's so many things that he is more prepared and better qualified than I am in a number of aspects of life. These kind of raising his name in this topic is, we could do a podcast just on that alone. But I think that 5 days is better than no days, and 30 days is better than 5 days, and 6 months is better than 30 days, and so on. And really, it comes down to, I think, is what do you want in life? Why do that 5 day? Is it because you were told, or is it because you wanted it? And so building that out, if you wanted it, if you wanted that 5 days, then you should want 30 days. Then you should want 6 months. And so why doesn't anyone extend beyond 5 days? Well, it's probably because they've got busy lives and they've got other things on the go. And the piece of clay on their potter's wheel isn't all about just singular becoming a sniper. And so I prefer personally someone who doesn't become too dogmatic or too target locked, no pun intended, on the pipeline that they want to become a sniper, as an example. I would much prefer a person standing in front of me to be a little more holistic, a little more three-dimensional. And so they want to be several things, but then finding that balance for those several things so that they are synergistically becoming the best version of themselves, that's the trick. So rather than just becoming the one thing, I prefer to see a person become many things in a harmonic balance that is representing their best essence that day, that week, that year.
I dig it.
Yeah,
I dig
yeah.
it.
I'll add to that. Just Seb and I did it for fun. We're not claiming for snipers. We just got better at long range shooting over 5 days.
No, but to that point, I'm assuming you guys are both going to continue to use those skills, though, and you're going to build upon them, and you're going to take that information and go, you know, that was a super fun course. I can apply it to this. And when I go hunting, I'm going to try for this position over that, or I'm going to do the math in a little bit different way. And I think that goes back to the concept of deeds, again, is that it's a continual search, as to what Shaun was just saying, is that it's not just the fact that you took the 5-day course and now sweet, done, and you can hang your rifle up. You're going to continue to use those things, and you're going to continue to build on them. You're going to apply them to the rest of your life in all kinds of different ways, which is, I think, the idea.
I should say one more thing. Arj and Seb may actually be more qualified than I am right now, because A, it's been a long time since I wore a ghillie suit or any version of sniperific stuff. But more importantly, the timeline gap between when I was super squared away till now in respect to the long barrel, Arj and Seb have probably been introduced to more relevant or more modern or more impactful processes than I have back in the day. And so I'm not going to say they might be better shots than I am, because I'm a pretty good shot. But what I will say is they probably have new information that I'm not privy to, that I haven't been exposed to. And that's on me. But then I'm okay with that, because my life is full with so many things that I don't feel the need to have to, quote unquote, catch up to the latest, greatest scalpel techniques, because what I have is already acceptable. And so that acceptable line, that's different for everyone. But what I will say is that that acceptable line is not carved in stone. And so after this conversation, while I'm out on the DZ, I'll probably be chewing on that a little bit, thinking like, I don't like being behind the 8 ball behind Seb, so maybe there needs to be a little bit of polishing of the trigger finger.
Maybe
We're
just a little
all
bit.
a little bit behind this. We're all a little bit behind the 8 ball when it comes to Seb and other guys. I'll say one thing too that is really interesting that this is opening up is like this idea of chasing labels, right? You do a 2-day CQB and now you want to be an operator. You get that, you want that label. You do a 5-day long range shooting course and now you're saying, you know, you're a sniper. It is interesting, and I have no real answer to it, but I do see it a lot that you know, as you add tools to your toolbox. I'm not saying it's us or anyone in our community, but there is this tendency of like chasing a label of who am I now that I did that, you know, or I've onboarded that tool, rather than just saying it's a new tool in my toolbox and it's going to help with my adaptability.
I wonder how much this plays into our kind of desire for qualifications. And I say this in a military sense, but I think this happens for everybody, is that you see somebody with a label, like you say, right? Like, oh, that guy's a doctor. Cool. Like you can see his fast car, or like, oh, well, if I'm a doctor, then I could have the fast car. Or you see an operator with all the cool kit and the friggin' quad barrel nods and all the cool stuff, right? And you're like, man, if I could just do that, if I could just get all that stuff, then I could be that thing. And I wonder how much of it has to do with that kind of almost keeping up with the Joneses kind of mentality of just, I want to be able to do that, but I don't know how. So I'll just copy it and I'll just mimic it. And then hopefully that'll work. And without any real knowledge or depth of thought on it. And this is a really awesome conversation. Thank you guys so far. I got lots to chew on today. You got any other thoughts before I jump into this next video?
I just want to be careful that anyone out there who's listening to this, when we're talking about labels, which is an important topic, of course, that they consider the label. You don't own the label until you actually do the thing. Like you can't think about going on a 2-day long-range shooting course and believe that you are now it. So this idea being that the forward planning loop makes you become what you see in the future just by seeing it in the future. Nothing becomes anything until you've applied the action to become it through action. And so I'd stand up. This is a 3 Arrow apparel t-shirt from our good friend down south, been on the podcast a number of times. I'd show you the back of the t-shirt, but I don't want to stand up and discombobulate the podcast. But on the back, it has a quote that talks about how you're supposed to live your life. And that mantra on the back of this t-shirt is specific to a vibe, to a feel, to a direction that a person should have in a very small or very distilled sense of this is what I'm about. The label that I'm wearing is a t-shirt right now, the logo on the back, the statement on the back, that helps me kind of look at my day in a certain way. But this t-shirt is kind of earned to some degree rather than just purchased off the shelf, like just do it or kick that ass. Well, those are cool slogans if you're putting action to those slogans. And so I don't think you can buy the label and not live it. Otherwise, I think many years down the road, you'll look back with a great amount of regret that you posed your way through life and realized how empty it left you decades from now.
That is a good point. Our good friend, Dean Gopal, jumped on the Instagram side and said, stand up. Let's see it. So I'm going to put you up on the big screen here. Let's see it. There you go. Live life through action. Bam. There you go, Dean. That was for you. Now, we're just about out of time, but I want to hit on this video because I think it's a key part of it. And we've been kind of tiptoeing around it a little bit about this concept of, what is it we're doing with our time, right? Like, if you want to do a shooting range, go to a shooting range. You want to be able to be an operator where that's going to take a certain amount of time. You want to be able to do anything. That's going to take a certain amount of time. So I'm going to jump into this video and then we'll discuss it before we run out of time here. Here we go.
Time.
Okay.
Period. Have you ever been to the past or the future?
Thought. Past is thought.
No. You think of the past, but you think of the past now. Have you ever actually been to the place called the past that you think about?
No.
It's not possible. Nobody's ever been there. It's a belief. It's just a belief that we all take for granted. Is it your experience that the now is moving along a line of time from the past to the future? Is the now moving? And how long does the now last?
I don't think I've ever measured it.
It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't last. The now doesn't last in time. There is no time for the now to last in. Now is not a moment sandwiched between these two vast spaces. There is no vast space either side of the now. The now is not a moment. These are New Age ideas. They have nothing to do with truth or reality. The now is not a moment. Now is eternity. The ever-present, not the everlasting. But when that now is filtered through the limitations of the mind, it appears as time.
Okay.
The mind is like a prism which refracts the now, which has no dimensions, into a single dimension of time.
Bam. What do you guys think? Arsh, I'm going to come to you. What do you got?
That's deep. That's deep. That's deep for the end of this, near the end of this conversation. Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with him. I think just looking back at our conversation over the last hour, where the past, comes into reality and action are the skills that you learn and maintain and continue to live going forward. So, the hard work you put in and the lessons you've learned, if you forget those lessons, then you're forgetting the past. If you remember them, then you're living the past because you've learned them before. So that's how I can see that time continuum kind of moving through everyday action. Is how do you learn from your past and continue to do your best every day, like it's written here in front of us.
Ooh, I like that. Shaun, what do you got?
I did say this recently on a podcast. The fact that based on my military career and being around enough explosions and stuff, that my memory has gaps in it. Like I have chunks of missing memory. And that isn't uncommon for anyone who's served in a robust career. That's TBI to some degree and etc. So fascinatingly enough for me, when I started to realize this, I had to kind of come to a reckoning with myself to see how I was going to move forward with that idea of, man, I'm missing aspects of my past. And so I simply came to this conclusion that it is irrelevant that I can't remember the Tuesday mess hall meal on a particular month, on a particular year, on a particular base. It's inconsequential. What I tend to hang on to now is less of the past experiences, and I try to hang on to the past wisdoms. So effectively, I'm not reliving fast roping out of a helicopter or whatever. What I am doing is I'm considering, not reliving, I am considering lessons learned, wisdoms learned, the evolution of a deeper sense of memory that isn't based on specific incidents of the past. I'm not looking for the minutia, as it were, of the past. What I am looking for is the overarching wisdom of the past. And because of the way that I like to do it, I don't have to focus on that one time that one thing happened. Because if you do enough things, they all tend to synthesize into a learned wisdom moment. And so I think the past for me is less important. The wisdom is the aspect that I really, really look for. And it isn't like a hunt. I allow it to bubble up. And that bubbling up doesn't occur unless I provide the opportunity for it within my internal world, either through meditation or being out in nature, or even in these podcasts. I allow the wisdom to bubble up without control. I simply let it occur. And until you start letting wisdom occur in your life, then all you're really doing is hanging out in the past or planning for the future, and you've forgotten the now. And so my podcasting, as I've said in the past to Chance and a number of the guests, is even as I speak right now, I have no idea what I'm going to say next. And I don't know what I said 30 minutes ago. I'm just simply trying to exist in the moment, do my best, hang out with cool people, gain the wisdom that I need to gain in the moment and post podcast. And I keep it as simple as that. So this idea of dwelling on the past is not something that I do and haven't done for a long time.
I dig it. The podcast is a great example because, man, I could not tell you what we talked about last week or the week before or the week before that. Now I could look it up and I could pull it up. And then as soon as I were to look it up, I'd be like, oh, right, that conversation. Cool. And I'd be able to start bringing memories forward. But that would take like an effort. I would have to go through a process in order to get to there. But man, like we were joking about in the green room before we started, with the fact that like the first year was a blur. I mean, we did 365 podcasts in 365 days. I don't remember a lot of those. I remember having those conversations, and I remember key moments of them, but the wisdom was still absorbed. That's the thing, is that I can still, in a conversation like this, I can pull up that information and be like, oh yeah, this one time we talked about this. I couldn't tell you what day it was. Probably couldn't tell you who was on the show at that point in time, but because it does blend. It all kind of blends into one singular podcast for me now, and that this is a continual presence for me, as I get to be in the moment the most here. It's probably maybe number 2. One is with my kids, but this is probably number 2. But that's the point, is that the time frame isn't about what happened. It's letting that information come forward on its own when it's necessary, when it's needed, or when I need to pull it up. Arj, you got any thoughts before we shut her down for the afternoon?
Yeah. I think, we're talking about time, but I think we're also spending a lot of time talking about memory. And we are the sum of our experiences. I love telling my kids that. I love telling myself that the things that I do make me who I am today, and where I align myself to my mission of who I want to be. I fill my experiences, or I prioritize those experiences that I want to build, Arj into a better person. And an anecdote that I'd love to go and footnote and find for you and the listeners is, I've heard that the human brain, like the working memory capacity of a human brain, is about 40 hours of memory. And that stays true throughout your life. Like, you only actually remember about 40 hours of your life when it's all over, which is kind of amazing. And at the same time, depending how you look at it, could be sad. But I think recording and spending time with friends is a way to actually amplify and expand that working memories, because you can reach back into your networks and say, hey, do you remember that? Or what was that hit like? Or what was that training evolution like? And staying connected is important. So what the work you guys do is putting this wisdom down into, recorded digital fashion helps everybody to be able to reach back into that working memory, and pull what aspects they want to pull out of it to make themselves a better person. So let me go find that science for you guys, and I'll send it over to you.
Sweet. I dig it. I'm gonna look into that one for sure. Well, first off, I just want to say thanks, Arj. I mean, it's been super cool being able to actually hang out and chat with you for the first time, and I love the fact that you guys are both kind of remote, and I'm the guy in the studio. It works out pretty well. I just wanted to say thanks, though. This has just been an awesome conversation. So, Arj, Shaun, thank you guys. This has been wicked. Any final thoughts? Anything in everything we've talked about in terms of stability in a spinning world? Anything still burn in the back of your brain? Arj?
I'm just going to show you guys the beautiful Canadian Yukon real quick as I sign out. But just, thanks to you guys for inviting me onto here and allowing me to speak. And, some of my colleagues were like, how are you going to prepare for this? And I think Shaun just put it great. He was just like, you don't prepare for it. You just talk. You just let it be. So thanks for letting me be.
Oh, man, it is our pleasure. Shaun, any final thoughts from the drop zone?
No, that's one of the best ways to round it out in like the hundreds of podcasts that we've had, or the 1,000+ that I've been on personally. I'd just say that might be one of the finest ways to round it out. I'm not often at loss for words, so I don't want to leave it at that. I will say this, that Arj, thanks for joining us. It was fantastic. Your reputation preceded you, and it's nice to see that your reputation stands up in a live podcast as a grounded, centered, intelligent, caring, thoughtful human being. So looking forward to seeing you on the podcast again in the future, where we can maybe spend more time diving a bit deeper into some topics that even we covered today. So that's great. Thanks so much, Arj.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, it is truly our pleasure. I don't have anything to add, so I will just shut her down with, as we all continue to learn, build, and grow. We'll see you all next week. Gmo. Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see you all next time.